Good evening, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service. You're watching Alaska weather on this 10th of October. Thanks for joining us tonight. As always, you can get your very latest forecast information by calling the Alaska Weather Information Line, 1-800-472-0391. That's a free call for you here in Alaska. If you're online, go ahead and head to weather.gov/Alaska. That's our website that takes you to any part of the state. If you click on that once on the map, you'll be taken to either Fairbanks, Juneau, or the Anchorage Weather Forecast Office that serves your community's weather needs. One more click will get you to your local forecast information for your village. So 2 clicks away all the time. David.Snider@NOAA.gov is the easy way to find me. If you can't find what you're looking for, I'm privileged to serve you any way I possibly can. And while I won't be at AFN this year, as you are traveling, please do be safe. Please use our weather forecast information to meet your needs and let us know what we can do to improve our service to you. A really good time to let us know is at the National Weather Service booth there at AFN in Fairbanks if you're headed that way. Watch for all of my friends there. Tell us what you like about the weather show. Tell us what you'd like to see different for your community and how we can help do a better job for you. It's your opportunity to let us know, and while I won't be there, I will love to see your pictures and your stories, so please let me know how things are going there at AFN and have a wonderful time. Here's a look at the state of Alaska's watches, warnings, and advisories. Red areas are bad. Those are warnings, and we're talking about a high wind warning across the north and eastern Gulf as we start up tonight. From about 10 o'clock on, winds may start to gust up to 60 miles per hour. Now, we expect the high wind warning to last until 10 a.m. tomorrow for Yakutat, Pelican and Elfin Cove, I should say. And on down the road toward the Baranof Island area at Sitka and Port Alexander, also under a high wind warning there. That'll go until 10 o'clock in the morning. Gusts to 60 miles per hour will be possible. We'll see things improve in the north first and then gradually shift southward throughout the day with the high winds and certainly some heavy rain. A look up north shows we also have warnings and advisories posted for the interior. Winter weather advisories are in yellow. Denali and the eastern Alaska Range also under winter weather advisories there. Red areas are winter storm warnings. And right now in the upper Tanana Valley and the 40-mile country, we are under a winter weather advisory, but I went ahead and labeled it as a warning. It is going to be a warning as we head into the evening hours there, so we're just going to tell you what the worst is going to be. And as we go through the evening hours, it looks like places in the eastern Alaska Range could see as much as 8 to 12 inches of additional snowfall, with as much as 19 in some higher terrain areas. So if you're driving north through the Richardson Highway passes or going up out of the Susitna Valley through the Denali region, up through Healy, and then on into Fairbanks or coming southbound, you are going to run into some winter weather and certainly some tricky driving conditions on the parks there. So be extra careful, take it slow, plan ahead, make sure you've got some good safety supplies in the back of your truck, and just be prepared for some slushy, wet, and perhaps even heavy snow in some locations there along the highway. For the Yukon Flats, probably looking at about 3 to 5 inches of snow, maybe as much as 8 in some of the higher terrain areas. The Deltana and Tanana Flats region, the winter storm warning here, could see as much as 9 inches of snow. Some of that could be mixed in with a little bit of rain or freezing rain there. A better chance that's going to happen here at some of the lower terrain areas. And again, a lot of these warnings and advisories will take us into Saturday morning. So we are looking at kind of a long duration period of snow here. Most areas looking at least 4 inches, and on the high side, you're pushing 8 to 12. And in the Alaska Range here, in the eastern parts, you're looking at as much as 19 inches of snow. So winter's here, I guess, just like that. Here's a look at the satellite picture across the region, and this big wave you see moving up out of the Gulf, a broad area of low pressure here, and another one here. The one in the southern Gulf is going to spin up and strengthen, and then working with what's left over from the low pressure system already across the Gulf, it's going to strengthen the wind here across the northern parts of the Gulf Coast. Remember how we were talking about this yesterday, how that zone likes to really strengthen here? That barrier jet is what we call that, fast-moving, tiny little ribbon of air. But the low pressure system comes in, it pulls in wind from all of southeastern Alaska and kind of gets stuck. And as it's getting stuck, it really starts to spin up and strengthen and pull a tremendous amount of air through that very narrow channel that it's created up against the mountains. And boy, does the wind blow. Nothing new for the folks there in Pelican, Yakutat, and certainly Elfin Cove, but for the rest of us, that's how that works. Now out across the west, you can see some drier conditions shaping up across southwestern Alaska, and certainly plenty of clouds, but overall a drier, more stable pattern. Behind that, though, is another wave of low pressure. This one just moving off the Kamchatka Peninsula is going to strengthen across the central and southern parts of the Bering. And behind that is what's coming in later on this weekend. That is the remnants, not right now, it's not a remnant at all, it is a super typhoon that's moving toward Tokyo. But by the time it gets here, it'll be a remnant system, and it will be capable of producing some stronger winds across the southern Bering Sea, maybe around the Aleutian, so we'll be watching that. And right now it looks like it will not be heading into any part that could create any coastal flooding or surges that we should be concerned about. But we are watching that system very carefully, of course, just for you. Now, as we take a look at the weather map for this afternoon, low pressure sitting across the northern Gulf. That's the first system, 1,008 millibars there. It is already bringing rain into southeast. It has brought copious amounts of rainfall to Prince William Sound and waves of occasionally heavy rainfall across south central and into the Anchorage area and the Matanuska-Susitna valleys. The second wave that's coming in behind that has even more moisture with it, but it's going to have more wind. By the time it moves northward and combines with this system here, that's the one that's going to bring in the wind across the northern Gulf Coast and will produce the high wind warnings. All of this combined with the cold air that's coming in behind it is what's creating the snow across the interior, and you can see how much it's going to spread out across the central and eastern interior tonight. It does look like there will be some periods of heavier snowfall, and again, really focusing on the eastern Alaska range and that higher terrain that has a lot of lift and really helps push those clouds up to great enough heights, cool them off, and create the perfect crystalline setup there to create some heavier snowfall. Now, as this is transitioning, the eastern Tanana Valley area may have a little bit of freezing rain mixed in with it. There's still lower level warm air that's trapped in this that hasn't been completely scoured out by the depth of winter cold just yet. So we're still heading in that direction. Back to the west, low pressure is working across the southern Bering, and as we go into Friday, it looks like that's going to gradually fall apart. As it gets a little more mixed up, it will still have some disturbances working around it, capable of supporting some rainfall there across the central and eastern Bering Sea, creating some light rain across the Alaska Peninsula all the way out toward the Shumagins, and a little bit more of a west and southwesterly breeze across parts of the central and eastern chain. By and large, the heaviest weather maker will be across the northern Gulf at this point, as that front is working across southeast. Periods of heavier rain will slowly move through the region, but really it's going to be the wind that you notice here, I think, coming in from the west and northwest as we get into your Friday afternoon. Now remember, most of these high wind warnings will expire by 6 to about 10 o'clock in the morning, starting in the north and then slowly diminishing down to the south. But up across the interior, windy conditions and snow will continue to fly as we go through Friday night and on into Saturday. Behind that, some breaks in the clouds across the lower and middle Yukon, areas of low clouds, and maybe some light snow or flurries across the North Slope. Ceilings and visibility will be down. You'll see that in the aviation forecast in just a bit. And high pressure coming out of the Gulf of Anadyr will push that colder air right up against the bays of Kotzebue Sound, also Norton Sound, and into southwestern Alaska. While it doesn't look like we'll see any sizable accumulations, that onshore flow and cold air will likely keep visibility and ceiling down for you as well. For Saturday, low pressure is still present across the eastern Gulf, but not in its truest form that it once was. 1,013 millibars there. Showers expected with low pressure pushing that air ashore. It will be wet, and there may be some snow across some of the higher terrain, including Chilkoot and White Pass in the region anyway. Watch for some snow to get into the area, but probably not down at sea level there. I don't think you have to worry about that just yet. Out across Norton Sound, 1,025 millibar there. It looks like low clouds will be possible, at least in the morning, generally along and north of the Yukon Valley. And out to the west, widespread area of cloud cover there for the central and western Bering, with low pressure just north of Atka at 1,009 millibars. That southerly flow still bringing showers back into the Bristol Bay region and creeping them eastward ever so slowly. You'll notice that ridge of high pressure sitting right across the central and southern parts of the Bering. That's going to slow this down and really just let this kind of sit and spin for a while here across the southern Bering Sea. There is another wave out here across the west by Saturday. That is not the remnant typhoon we're watching. That will be up here as we get into probably Sunday and Monday as we look at the northern Bering Sea. No hint of it yet on this map. It's going to be a fast mover, but again, it is still heading for Japan as of this evening. Let's take a look at your temperatures as we get into Friday morning here. 40s for most of southeast, fairly mild there with a lot of wet weather and wind coming your way. 30s and 40s for parts of Prince William Sound. Been a soggy day for you. Mid-30s around Cook Inlet all the way down toward Kodiak Island, almost at 40 degrees. Bristol Bay in the lower 40s tonight, 39 around King Cove and Falls Pass, 40 in St. Paul and St. George. 20s and 30s around the middle Tanana Valley, Koyukuk Valley, and Galena looking at 27 overnight. About the same there in Nome, Shishmaref 33 and milder. 31 around Utqiagvik and Point Barrow, 27 for Kaktovik with Fort Yukon at 28. High temperatures on your Friday, 40s and 50s. Coastal areas may be even warmer, like Sitka at 51 degrees. all the way down to Fognac Island and areas around Kodiak, just shy of 50 tomorrow. Looks like 51 around Cordova. Valdez a little bit cooler, 45 around Wasilla out toward Palmer, 45 for Talkeetna as well, 35, maybe even lower 30s as you look at Eagle and Northway tomorrow. Looks like areas around the Deltana and Tanana Flats region as well as Eielson, probably holding around 32 tomorrow afternoon, so be careful out around North Pole. 35 around Tanana, 31 for Ambler. Bettle's a little bit cooler, 28. Wainwright looking at 38 degrees. Point Hope and Point Lay both 37 degrees. Same for Shishmaref and Nome, and 37 around Gamble and St. Lawrence Island. Into Saturday morning, some places like Yakutat all the way out toward Elfin Cove and Gustavus will be cooler in the 30s. Just about everywhere else in Southeast will likely hold in the 40s tomorrow morning or Saturday morning. Lower 30s around Prince William Sound. Kenai, you're looking at 29 degrees. Grayling out toward Lake Iliamna, all the way down toward Red Devil. We're probably talking about temperatures that are holding in the lower 20s. It's going to be a cool start on Saturday morning. The Alaska Peninsula, probably upper 40s to about the mid 40s for the central and eastern Aleutians. Arctic Village, crisp 9 degrees in the morning on Saturday. Afternoon highs on Saturday, 40s and 50s for southeast. Cordova 45. Homer and Seward, likely lower 40s for your Saturday afternoon. 20s and 30s for the interior. Temperatures cool down as the clouds start to move out. Lower 30s for the central and eastern Beaufort Seacoast. Kotzebue Sound temps in the mid 30s, 36 in Kivalina. Bristol Bay looking at 42.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
On to aviation weather now. IFR concerns will stick around the Beaufort Seacoast and the north-facing slopes of the Brooks Range. To the south, you may have some areas with VFR around Ambler to Bettles. South of that, though, and back into the Yukon, IFR conditions will be fairly thick all the way across the northern Gulf Coast with high winds, low ceilings, and poor visibility at times all the way from the Dixon entrance north into Icy Cape and Cape Fairweather. The inside passage looks to be MVFR at least. Some of the passes could lean over toward IFR with periods of heavy rain. Out across the west, IFR lingering across the western chain all the way out to just about Adak. The Pribilovs and some parts of the central and eastern Aleutians to Nikolsky will be looking at IFR in the morning. That should improve into the afternoon as that lifts northward, but you'll see IFR spreading up toward St. Matthew, St. Lawrence Island, Nunivak Island with VFR across some of your southwestern capes into Bristol Bay. Also looking at continued VFR around Kodiak Island through the afternoon and improving conditions across southeast, though I would not be surprised to see MVFR creeping into some of our northern bays and passes simply because there will be rounds of rain and wind in the region. IFR across the Alcan border and up north, widespread marginal conditions with IFR just flirting with Point Barrow. As we get into Saturday morning, watch for MVFR to be fairly widespread across the north. The upper end of the Kobuk and Noatak valleys likely looking at least some period of IFR Saturday morning. Marginal conditions stretching down into the upper Kuskokwim and across the upper Tanana Valley into the Wrangell-St. Elias region, covering up all of southeast. And again, periods of moderate to occasionally heavy rain working through northern parts of southeast, so don't be surprised to see that changing in the west. And a little out toward the Pribilovs, you're looking at IFR conditions there all the way out to just north of the western end of the chain. By Saturday afternoon, that next wave is moving eastward into parts of Bristol Bay, but you can see continued areas of VFR across the southwestern Capes and Bristol Bay. All of the Alaska Peninsula looking at marginal conditions. Kodiak looking okay so far by Saturday afternoon. South Central and the upper end of the Cusco, as well as the Yukon Delta looking okay. The upper end of the Yukon looking fine. And IFR conditions will linger around the north-facing slopes of the Brooks Range and parts of the west with a little bit of improvement around Arctic Village and maybe Fort Yukon. Southeast looking at marginal conditions in the north and eastern Gulf Coast, especially the outer coast, looking at continued MVFR. Anaktuvik Pass and Adigan Pass will hover under marginal conditions as we go throughout your day. Looks like Lake Clark and Merrill Pass expected to start at IFR, and then some improvement should be noted as we go throughout the afternoon. Rainy Pass in the similar boat. IFR concerns to start your Friday morning. Same goes for Windy Pass. Marginal levels should return by the afternoon. You'll see similar conditions and changes there in Isabel Pass. Out to the east, Mentasta Pass looks to be locked in with IFR. Periods of rain and snow will be in the region, so don't be surprised to see that low throughout the day. Tenita Pass, we expect to see marginal levels through most of your Friday. Porter's Pass should continue to improve to VFR as we get into Friday afternoon. And Chilkoot and White Pass looks like Friday and probably Saturday as well will hover at least at marginal conditions with maybe some hints of VFR throughout the afternoon. Freezing levels show a pretty tight gradient here across southeast. Levels down to 2,000 feet around Chilkoot and White Pass, to about 8,000 feet around Craig and Klawak. Out to the west, the 2,000-foot line is down below the Kenai Peninsula for the most part, right over Homer. And then from the Pribilofs, 2 to about 4,000 feet with levels in the chain between 4 and 8,000 feet. Cooler air is certainly making a comeback. Icing potential has a lot of moisture in place. The levels are coming down, so we've added some considerable moderate to the mountain regions, as well as Wrangell, St. Elias down into the northern parts of southeast. The levels, though, are all over the place, from about 2,000 feet in the north with isolated moderate for the north slope, above 3,000 feet from Old Crow into the upper Yukon, and southwest into Lake Iliamna around 4,000 feet and above 8,000 feet around the Pribilofs and the Alaska Peninsula, to above 10,000 feet across northern parts of southeast, and near 4,000 feet and above for areas around the Kenai Peninsula up toward Anchorage. So again, a lot of cool air moving south, and that's because low pressure is working right through over the jet stream, right over the 49th state. To the south, fast-moving air that's going to push storm systems into southeast. A brief ridge building out in the west, and then continued areas of troughiness or unsettled weather coming in from the west. At 9,000 feet, you can see our low pressure system here north of Juneau, east of Fort Yukon and Tanana. And that broad northwesterly flow sweeping in around 10 to 30 knots, 40 to 50 knots across the northern Gulf, southwesterlies for southeast, and continued unsettled weather for the Bering. At 3,000 feet, a strong northerly flow through the interior, westerlies strong at 45 to 50 over the Gulf, southwesterlies also blowing into the central and northern parts of southeast, anywhere from 15 to 35, and 45 knot winds across the central chain at 3,000 feet. Turbulence should be a concern for southeast tomorrow. Could be isolated severe below 6,000 feet for really most of the panhandle up toward the eastern end of Prince William Sound. Considerable moderate will be widespread.
Transit Fever 2019.
Welcome to Stargazers. I'm Dean Regas, astronomer from the Cincinnati Observatory.
And I'm James Alberry, director of the Kika Silva Pla Planetarium in Gainesville, Florida. There's something really exciting happening in the sky next month, and it involves the closest planet to the sun.
That's right, James. On Monday, November 11th, 2019, we will get to see the planet Mercury passing directly in front of the sun.
We call that a transit of Mercury, and it's something you don't get to see very often.
What are we talking about? Let's show you.
Transits of Mercury across the sun are rare events where Mercury passes directly between Earth and the sun. It's like a teeny tiny eclipse, but not nearly as dramatic. From Earth's perspective, we'll see Mercury as a little black dot crossing in front of the sun, and even though they're rare, these Mercury transits are a lot more frequent than transits of Venus.
That's right, James. On average, there are between 13 and 14 transits of Mercury visible each century. This is mostly because Mercury is much closer to the sun and it orbits more rapidly. A Mercury year is only 88 days long, so it passes between the Earth and the sun 4 times each year, at least from here on Earth. However, Mercury's orbit and Earth's orbit are inclined to each other, so most of the time Mercury passes above or below the sun as it passes us.
Here on Earth, transits of Mercury happen in May and November. The first observation of a transit of Mercury was on November 7, 1631, by French astronomer Pierre Gassendi. The most recent transits happened in 2003, 2006, and 2016.
After this one, the next transit will occur on November 13th, 2032, but that one will not be visible from the United States. That means you might have to wait 30 years until 2049 to see another transit in our hemisphere, so don't miss this one. Transits of Mercury are not only visible from Earth. On June 3rd, 2014, the Curiosity rover on Mars viewed Mercury transiting the sun. This marked the first time in history where a planetary transit was viewed from a location other than Earth.
Speaking of which, if you happen to be visiting Mars on November 10th, 2084, make sure you take your solar filters with you because that's the day our planet Earth will transit the sun from Mars's perspective. If you had a telescope with you, you'll even be able to see Earth's moon.
Yeah, I know that's like 65 years from now, but think about it. People are living longer these days, and we might have astronauts visiting Mars by that time.
Besides, if you don't want to wait until 2084, visit Jupiter on January 10th, 2026, and you can see Earth transiting the sun then.
Now, mark your calendars because the next transit of Mercury will begin at 7:36 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Monday, November 11th, and last until 1:02 p.m. Next month, we'll give you all the details on how to safely observe this unique event. So, in the meantime, let's check out what's going on in the rest of the sky.
Okay, we've got our skies set up for shortly after sunset any night this week. And if your skies are clear, you'll get to see the two largest planets in our solar system gracing the sky. If you look toward the southwest, you'll see the J-shaped pattern of stars that make up Scorpius the Scorpion. Directly above it, you'll see the bright planet Jupiter.
Using a telescope, you'll be able to see 4 star-like objects to the right and left of Jupiter. These are Jupiter's 4 largest moons, Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto. And each night, they'll be in a different position.
If you look due south, you'll see the stars of Sagittarius, the Centaur Archer. Among them, you'll see a bright cream-colored light just above the handle of the teapot in Sagittarius. That's the planet Saturn.
Although we're getting further away from Saturn every day, you'll still be able to see Saturn's magnificent rings through even a modest telescope.
So, there you have it. Just after sunset this week, you have Jupiter to the southwest, Saturn in the south,
And next month on November 11th, the must-see event of 2019, the transit of Mercury. Keep looking up.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
And back with your Sea Ice Edge update. Ice is growing along the marginal ice zone, and you can see the broad area here colored in red is the higher concentration ice. Normally colored in white on our maps. We're still fixing the sea ice graphics issue that has been with us for several days now, but we hope to have that fixed and back the way you normally like to see it. But good news is that there is ice growing. However, with a little bit of wind up there across the Arctic, the ice growth will be slow, and sea surface temperatures closer to the coast still remain very warm. For the very latest sea ice information anytime, weather.gov/Anchorage/ice is the place to go online. For southeast, winds are going to come up sharply tonight and into tomorrow. Southeasterlies gusting to 50, maybe higher across some parts of Stevens Passage and northward. Will be mentioned in the forecast there as strong winds. High wind warnings, though, are in effect starting tonight across the northern Gulf Coast all the way down toward Port Alexander. We can expect those to improve as we go through the rest of the early morning hours tomorrow, ending up north there, closer to the vicinity of the low pressure system, but gusts to 60 miles per hour possible on land. And this will help to build seas up to about 19 to 22 feet with onshore winds anywhere from 30 to probably stronger 40 knots. Now, as we get into the afternoon on Saturday, winds should diminish greatly. South and southeasterlies on the inside, 15 to 20, and 3 to 4 foot seas there on the inside with a westerly flow coming in from Cross Sound all the way down to the Dixon entrance, 20 to 25. You're looking at 13 to 15 foot seas. Winds will still be a little blustery, and we'll still have this wraparound flow coming in around low pressure, working its way toward southeast, 15 to 20 knots there with 12 to 14 foot seas in the northern Gulf on Saturday. On Friday, you're looking at west and northwesterly winds coming across the northern Gulf, anywhere from 15 to 19 foot seas with those 45 knot winds, 30 knot winds coming out of Prince William Sound from the north and west, a little bit stronger outside of Hitchinbrook entrance with a 17 foot sea, 4 to 6 foot seas down Cook Inlet, 20 to 25 knot winds there. So blustery all the way around. Conditions improve on Saturday. Northerlies inside of Prince William Sound, 20 to 35 knots across the north and western Gulf, 8 to 12 foot seas, the highest of which will be around the Barrens with a 25 knot wind on the western side, and 8 foot seas there, looking at light northerly winds coming down Cook Inlet, 10 knots and 2 to 3 foot seas on Saturday. For your Friday, northwesterlies around Bristol Bay, 25 knots and 6 foot seas, west and northwesterly winds across the Alaska Peninsula with 6 to 9 foot seas. There's southerlies around the southern end of the Alaska Peninsula with a 6 foot sea, a 20 knot wind there on Friday, becoming southeasterly on Saturday with 6 foot seas continuing. Westerlies over Kodiak Island, anywhere from 15 to 25, 6 to 8 foot seas expected. Southerlies coming into Perryville and Sand Point, 15 knots and 8 foot seas throughout the period. For Friday, south and westerlies, 25 to 30 knots there, anywhere from 7 to 9 foot seas, maybe as high as 10 north of Nikolsky, and south and westerlies across the region from Atka to Unalaska, 11 to 12 foot seas, 25 to 30 knot winds coming in with westerlies up to 25 from Adak all the way out towards Shemya on Saturday. By Friday, on Saturday, westerlies line up a little bit more through the central chain, anywhere from 15 to 20 knot winds, and 6 to 9 foot seas should be expected. South and westerly winds for Nikolsky to Unalaska, 15 to 20, and 7 to 9 foot seas at their highest around the Pacific coastal waters there on the south side. On the north side, 5 to 6 foot seas should be expected. For the west coast, northerlies coming down through Norton Sound off St. Lawrence Island, Nunivak Island through Etoll Strait, 15 knots, and about 3 to 4 foot seas will do the trick. East and southeasterly winds coming through St. Matthew, St. Paul, and St. George, all blowing there anywhere from 25 to 30 with 9 to 10 foot seas on Friday. You can see that improving a little bit on Saturday. Offshore winds will be the predominant flow from Savunga all the way down toward Nunivak Island, 15 to 25 with 7 to 8 foot seas there. Light winds from the north and west into Norton Sound, 10 knots and 2 foot seas. For the Beaufort Seacoast, westerlies 20 to 25, anywhere from 5 to 8 foot seas. A little less wind as you head into Kotzebue Sound and the Chukchi Coast. 15 knots and 5 to as strong as 8 foot seas there on Friday. You can see that improves on Saturday. Southwesterlies pick up though, 15 to 20, 5 to 6 foot seas there coming into the Chukchi. Northerlies for Utqiagvik and Point Barrow with a 7 foot sea. And north and westerlies pick up from Prudhoe Bay to Kaktovik, 25 to 30 knots with 8 to 9 foot seas on Saturday. Recapping tonight's weather, it is going to snow across the central and eastern interior. The eastern Alaska range could see anywhere from about 8 to 12 inches there, with 19 inches in some isolated areas there, so a little more in some of the higher terrain. Down around the south and eastern coast, winds are coming up. Look for high winds gusting to about 60 miles per hour, all the way from Yakutat and eastern Prince William Sound. On the edge east of Cordova, I should say, all the way down toward Port Alexander. High wind warnings are in effect right now. Look for storm force winds out over the Gulf and periods of heavy rain. As this tracks eastward, the snow will wind down as we go through your Saturday morning, and winds diminish as we get into Saturday afternoon.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.